Joining us now, our Canucks reporter, one half of the rink by duo, Andrew One. It's Jeff Paterson back here with Carson Price. Jeff, good morning.
Hi, guys.
The big news today from the Vancouver Canucks before we get into Seattle and Rick Tocchet and all that. The extension for Andrei Kuzmenko, it's a 2-year deal. It's $5.5 million per, and there's no trade protection. Your thoughts on this contract?
Yeah, never dull around these guys, is it, these days? That's for sure. Look, in a vacuum, the dollars, I think, are lower than I thought they would be for a guy who has been everything the Canucks had hoped he would be. But I was firmly on team trade, and so I don't fully grasp, the plan. And I'm still not convinced that there is a plan, brick by brick, or whatever that was that Alvin likes to talk about. It's a manageable number for a player who's been a nice fit for Elias Pettersson, and I do wonder if some of this is part of the broader plan for, trying to convince Elias Pettersson to stick around. But again, my mind is just blown with the commitment to wingers, first of all, and the fact that it is, more money out the door for a team that continues to bang this drum about creating cap flexibility and the cushion on the cap. And, it started with Besser, and then it went to McCabe in the summer, and then the commitment to JT Miller, who at that point was seen as a winger, although ultimately he's probably going to have to be a center once Horvat goes. And now this is more money committed to Andrei Kuzmenko. And as I said, 5.5 for a guy that, could end up being a 30, 35 goal scorer. I don't mind any of that, but in the next couple of years, where are the Vancouver Canucks? And how does this deal for this player, how does it further the cause ultimately, unless it is the Pettersson angle, and that's sort of the best that I can come up with right now.
Jeff, they think they can turn it around in a year or two. Rutherford said it on Sunday. This contract speaks to it. And, of course, they're trying to keep Elias in town after the events of this weekend and a likely trade of Bo Horvat.
Well, and fair enough, and they've got to come up with a concrete plan for Elias Pettersson. So if keeping his line mate and a guy that he's forged some chemistry off the ice with is part of it, then okay, fair enough. I can understand that. But look, we already knew that Bo Horvat was on the way out of town, but this just so signals that. And I, on some level, there is a respect issue here for a captain that's played hard for you for a lot of years, and every single guy that's lined up at the trough has got his, except the captain. And, what does this look like moving forward now? They cannot mess this up. They cannot run the risk of Bo Horvat getting injured. So, you've played your hand. You've committed to Kuzmenko. Bo Horvat will play elsewhere. How many more games can he play for the Vancouver Canucks at this stage? I wonder if we're getting really close to the end of Bo Horvat's time as a Canuck, just because they're going to have to protect the asset here. Maybe he plays against Columbus on Friday night, but coming out of the All-Star break, if there is a deal that's imminent, they cannot run the risk of this guy getting hurt that would scuttle any sort of trade. So, I know that there's still a month to go before that March 3rd trade deadline, but boy, when you commit to whatever little money you have, you've signaled all of this. And honestly, you've got a new coach that's coming in and trying to instill his systems and wants his players to play harder than they did in Seattle. Why would Bo Horvat bleed another drop for this organization now? If I'm Bo Horvat, it's all about me. And Bo doesn't strike me as a selfish kind of guy, but honestly, he's just been left to hang, sort of. Hasn't been dragged the way the coach was dragged. But if I'm Bo Horvat, it's all about me and making sure that nothing happens that's going to impact that next contract that's coming down the pipe.
First of all, I would love to believe that they're playing 3D chess here and that now they're going to trade him now that he has the extension in tow, because that makes it an even more desirable contract. But I don't think that for a second.
I like that turn of phrase, 3D chess. I like that better than the plan.
I think that they fall in love with players, and which is why the Bo Horvat storyline is weird. Because
Not they, Blake. He. The chairman falls in love with players.
However, because, you're right. It has bridged management groups now.
The hockey managers know better, but the chairman falls in love with players.
Well, ultimately, it's on their record, but they are closing doors on options. So you're right, Jeff. The pressure now to make sure that the Bo Horvat trade sets this franchise up for the future is immense, because they just closed the door on another one. Luke Schenn will fetch you something, but that's not going to be the transformative trade. It's all on Horvat.
And, of course, when you say set up for the future, we're talking the next year or two. We're not talking 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
No, and again, like, I've seen nothing that indicates any of this moving towards cap flexibility, because Bo Horvat's walking out the door at the tail end of a contract that's paid him $5.5 for 6 years. Kuzmenko is essentially just an extension of that contract. Kuzmenko is getting what Bo Horvat has been making here, so that's a push, and it doesn't do anything to free up cap space. It may be a value deal. Kuzmenko could certainly provide value on the contract. But so is Horvat this year, obviously, to the hockey club, but that doesn't mean anything for him. And so Bo, through no fault of his own, is getting squeezed out of here. And I do feel for the guy. I do, because I think deep down he probably wanted to stick it out and be a Canuck. And you know what? Maybe the best thing for Bo Horvat is to make a clean break here and just go see how life is done, how business is done elsewhere. And I hope he gets traded to a team that gets on a good long playoff run and he has a legitimate shot at winning a Stanley Cup, because they couldn't be further from the Cup as an organization here right now.
So we'll play Rick Tocchet from last night after they get annihilated by the Kraken, their first ever loss to Seattle, and we'll come back and discuss. Here's Coach.
Yeah, soft. It was you hate to call your team soft, but it was soft tonight. We didn't participate on the wall battles. We didn't get a rim out. That we knew this is a good team. We didn't play predictable. We started regrouping, like old habits came. We were just talking to the coach stuff, man. I wish I had about 10 practices. I really do. And because it shows tonight that we got a lot of work to do.
Tell us how you really feel, Coach. I love didn't participate. But he went to soft. He went to soft after 2 games and after his first defeat. Your thoughts on this new coach and how he communicates?
Well, he's not wrong. That was just a despicable performance from the Canucks. Full credit to the Kraken. They were rested. They were lying in wait. They hadn't played since Saturday. They lost their last game, so they hadn't beaten the Canucks, all of those things. And the Canucks playing back-to-back, and just with all that's gone on around this hockey club, I can't say that I was shocked with the result, but one thing about this Canucks team under Bruce Boudreau, they had some bad losses, but they generally didn't go quietly, in a lot of third periods, chipping away and sometimes coming all the way back. There was no comeback. There was no pushback. There was no fight. There was no structure. And soft is one of those words, along with quit, that, it's a dicey proposition for a coach that on Sunday spoke about how much of a relationship builder he is. And, he wants to hang out around the coffee machine. Like, I'm just envisioning that conversation. Hey, Bo, you were pretty soft, huh? I think you do have to worry. I mean, you're trying to get these players on your side, and then after the second game, you're calling them soft. So I'm curious to see how that one goes over. He also said he wished he had 10 practices back-to-back, and so it is a full day off for the Canucks because they play 3 and 4 before their break. But, man, I wish there was a practice today. What would that look like? And, of course, after Friday against Columbus, they're gone for the week, so Rick Tocchet's not wrong. Like, he's in a bit of a pinch here. If Jim Rutherford was in a pickle last week, Tocchet's in a bit of a pinch just because, you can do all the video work you want. He's talked about these extended team meetings, but he's had 1 practice. And I would imagine they get 1 practice before they start that Eastern road trip out of the All-Star break, and they're in New Jersey. New Jersey plays a lot like Seattle does, so, that one's not going to be easy to kick off the road trip, and before then it's Columbus, and the Blue Jackets coming off an overtime win in Edmonton, so you can think what you want about the Blue Jackets, but when you're the Canucks, there are no easy games, so I can't imagine that Friday is going to be a walk in the park either. So interesting. I mean, word choice, he went there, and he said, I don't like to call them soft, but he's not wrong. I mean, it was a brutal performance, but beyond that, it was a brutal effort from the Vancouver Canucks.
I think soft was calculated. I think you've probably seen a Huggy Bear type of coach here in the early going, nurturing and all that, especially with, the way Bruce went out. But I think he probably figured to himself, the first time that these guys don't play up to my standards, I'm going to have a real go at them publicly, and we'll see how they respond.
Because the schedule that Jeff just outlined, he doesn't have to back it up with a crazy practice and be the guy that they actually hate.
Exactly.
If he did back it up with a bag skate practice, then he might get some pushback early on. He can just talk the talk. He doesn't have to walk the walk.
And by the time this rolls around for a practice again, he's hoping it'll be better, I'm sure.
Just before Jeff answers, I can't tell you how much every fiber of my being recoils when I hear might get some pushback after a tough practice, after a loss like that. Like, have we gotten to the point where pro athletes are, in fact, that soft, are, in fact, that spoiled that they don't expect a tough practice after a bad game? Rant aside, J-Pat.
Well, and beyond soft, and I've lost track already, and he's been on the job, 3 days, and the number of times he's talked about and used the word predictable in the way that he wants his team to play. That's his version of structure, right?
Okay.
And he was asked, too, last night, like, Seattle was clearly a faster team, but you have to play fast, and then he said, no, we got to play predictable, and he wants everybody to know where everybody else is on the ice. That's fine, but he saw last night Tyler Myers doesn't know where he's going on the ice, so how can his teammates possibly know where he's going? He is the chaos giraffe after all, and he was as culpable as anybody. The high stick, the interference on Matty Benier is at 2-0. Like, they're down. They're not in that hockey game, but they're also not out of it at 2-0. And Myers going out of hhis way to exact some sort of revenge on the Kraken's young star. I mean, that's a penalty all day, and of course the way the Canucks kill or don't kill penalties. Seattle made them pay right there, and at 3-0, you knew that there was no coming back for the Vancouver Canucks. And then in the third period, OEL and Myers on the same side of the ice. Like, how many times has that happened? These are two veterans making $13 million combined, or whatever the number is, and they get trapped on the same side of the ice and leave guys. It was Ryan Donato wide open. But honestly, like, you can bring in Adam Foote and Sergei Gonchar, and you can bring in anybody off those Colorado and Pittsburgh teams. OEL and Myers are what they are at this point. And if you're going to continue to run them out there as much as the Canucks do, and, you know, in the third period, the game's getting away from him, Tocchet starts to experiment, different forward combinations, the line blender, but you keep those defensive pairs together? Like, why wouldn't you use that third period as some sort of experimentation to see about some other looks on defense? Because I think it's abundantly clear now, you cannot continue to run out OEL and Myers as a pair and think that you're going to have some sort of success.
Rick Tocchet's going to have some kind of communication magic skill here to get through to some of the members of this team who I think, in terms of defensive structure, are uncoachable perhaps. Like, I don't know. I mean, you look at some of the blunders and some of the space and what's left out there on a lot of these goals. Guys, Bruce Boudreau wasn't coaching that. Are you kidding me? He wasn't telling guys to go and do that, to have four skaters in one corner. Bruce Boudreau's not coaching that.
Nobody's coaching that play.
We coach that in Pee Wee. Like, you don't all chase into the corner. So, hey, I'm not saying Bruce is not culpable for some of the failures here, but I think the player personnel on this team are what they are in a lot of ways. And unless he's got some magic stroke of communication that teaches new habits to some of these old dogs, Jeff, I don't know how this is expected to turn around, and it's ominous because a lot of these guys are, of course, signed beyond this year.
Yeah, and penalty kill has been such a flashpoint for this group all year long. Last night was the 11th time in 48 games that they've been torched for multiple power play goals. You can't be spotting your opponents too and thinking that you're going to dig yourself out of a hole. And obviously they haven't when you look at their record, but the penalty kill is at 65%. Like, at 75%, it would be an issue. It would be bad, and we'd be talking about it. And it's at 65, and yet since Christmas, it is under 60%. Their penalty kill since Christmas, and like, that's a third of their season. Like, they played 15 games now since Christmas, and their penalty kill is at something like 59% over that 15-game stretch. Like, this is just incredible, and it really is headed for NHL history. Like, this is as bad as anybody has seen NHL penalty killing. This team went out and signed Ilya Mikheyev. They brought in Curtis Lazar. Like, those guys were signed to help the penalty kill, and it's gotten worse somehow, which is incredible. And I don't want to pin it on just those two, but they were signed for that specific reason. And the penalty kill has just gone so far south, and it looks like it's at the point of no return. Like, new coaches, sure, they'll give it a look here, but, it was as bad as it's been all season last night. And I don't know with this personnel, and ultimately the goaltending too. I mean, you do need some saves, But last night wasn't about goaltending. I mean, again, the cross-seam passes and open guys and all that kind of stuff. But just I am now fascinated. It's a morbid curiosity. But how low can this penalty kill go with whatever they've got, 34 games remaining in the season?
So one of the things that has also become theme, and I think something that would help in a lot of the matters we're talking about, particularly predictability of play, is game management. He talked about it on Sunday with regards to JT Miller. He talked about it last night. Live for another shift. Don't always have to make the home run play. It's okay just to advance the puck. He's basically trying to get these players to simplify a little bit. And I think it's also a tacit admission, Jeff, that a lot of these offensive players were cheating and looking to pad their own stats as opposed to playing good, sound, fundamental winning hockey. Fair?
Yeah, I think so. But it's all interconnected. And Travis Green used to always talk about, 5 guys on the ice. Yes, I think that at times forwards have cheated, but we also know that defensemen they're not good enough. This defensive group outside of Quinn Hughes isn't good enough to move the puck out of their zone. And so maybe I'm picking on Tyler Myers, and again, I mean, it's the last goal that Seattle scores, but I just thought it was so illustrative of, he's got time on the wall, he's got the puck on his stick, and he panics and he runs into trouble and then he turns it over. Like, this is the big leagues. You've got to be able to make the simplest of plays. And I'm not convinced that this group, as assembled, can do that. And so, should the forwards be back digging in and helping out even more? I suppose so. And maybe Tocchet will be able to get them to do some of that kind of stuff. We're 2 games in and you had asked me after the first game, what did I notice about Tocchet? The thing that jumped out to me last night, and the third period's garbage time, and there was a lot of Canuck power plays in the third, but at even strength, only Jack Studnicka played less than JT Miller. Like, this is a coach that was supposed to be brought in to, massage JT Miller, and they're going to have to coexist over the long haul here, or at least you'd think so. And on night number 2, JT Miller plays 10 minutes even at even strength and 16 and a half overall with some special teams duties. Like, that was a really curious ice time to me, rather than trying to, and I didn't expect him to be up in the 20s like Bo Horvat was against Chicago the other night, but still, when JT Miller's playing 10 minutes at evens and 16 and a half on the night, that's not something that we are used to seeing with this player and this hockey club.
Well, I'm going to guess in that case, he knew they were being whitewashed and he wanted to look at other people rather than, there was no comeback in the offense. So
yeah, but again, so much of the third period was power play that a lot of that even strength time was earlier in the hockey game. Again, the issues went beyond JT Miller last night, so I don't think it was a benching or anything like that, but it was just curious when only Studnicka has less ice time than you do, and that includes guys like Phil DiGiuseppe playing their first game as a Canuck, and again, it's just not happening for Curtis Lazar, although he did figure in the one goal they scored. I guess if there has been a bright light under Rick Tocchet in 2 nights, Dakota Joshua with points in both games, and again was noticeable and engaged physically, and that's good. I mean, I want to see more of that from him, but I want to see more of that from all of them, and that's the challenge for this new coaching staff.
Jeff, is it possible that this offensive Cinderella has turned into a pumpkin here?
Yeah.
In the last 5 games, they're averaging 2 goals a game. That's a long stretch for this team that has exploded for offense every other game at least. And that's under Boudreau too, so it's not like they're tightening up under Tocchet in that whole stretch.
No, and I think it's as simple as the power play has just gone ridiculously cold. Like, completely hasn't scored in the last 4 games, has only scored against Tampa in the last 6 games, and even then, third period goals when they were down 4-0, and it wasn't high leverage hockey. But since Christmas, and I talked about the penalty kill, that's been a disaster all season. Well, the power play's joined it now, and since Christmas, the power play's running at 13%. Teams have taken away Bo Horvat in the middle there. He hasn't scored often on the power play of late. Nobody has. Paterson still looking for his first. Hughes has 1. They're not getting it done. And again, I feel like EP40 is being wasted out there as the decoy. Like, he needs to have the puck on his stick. He's their most creative player. The threat of the one-timer, maybe early in the season, that was drawing some teams over to his side and freeing up others, but proof's in the pudding here. Nothing is working for this power play, so why wouldn't you move Elias Pettersson around? Like, he can shoot the puck from the left side of the ice as well. Get him involved in some of the playmaking and the distributing, And if teams have got the book on the Canucks and they're just putting Bo Horvat in a box, essentially, then good power plays get creative. They find other ways to generate. And to me, that's it. Like, early in the season, they were scoring 2 power play goals. They may be giving up 2 power play goals, but they were getting 2 of their own. You take those off the ledger, and you're seeing a team that at even strength just isn't generating a lot in the way of offense.
22nd now in net power play when you factor in all those shorthanded goals. 15th in the league in power play. Still 11th in the league in goals per game and 20th in shots. Just before we leave Tocchet, he owned his mistake yesterday, and that was fresh legs, not getting them in the lineup. He said he considered it, and for whatever reason he didn't. And I think that'll probably soften the soft comment with some players. That one answer, Jeff, that began with needs stronger leadership group.
Yeah.
That was pretty interesting as well. How did you
and he said a lot. Like, there's a lot to unpack in his post-game remarks, and you're right. I think like he was probably waiting for a loss like this one. And, who knows? You never know what your first loss is going to look or feel like, but he just emptied the chamber, because he also said nobody wanted the puck, which I thought was a fascinating comment too. Mm-hmm. That talks about investment and buy-in and all those types of things. He's got some more.
Jeff just slight collection. He said nobody handled the puck. He didn't say they didn't want it. He just said they didn't.
I think
did he say?
Oh,
okay. I just got the handled part. Okay,
that's what I said. Like, there was so much to unpack there. And honestly, guys, like, I think this is good. This is good for him. It's good for the big picture for the organization. Like, if they had scuffled and somehow pulled out a 3-game win streak, it would have just masked all of this, and they would have gone into the break, and Tocchet wouldn't. Like, these are the real Canucks. Sorry, this is who they are. This is what you got to work with. This is what you signed up for. And I think it was pretty important that he actually saw it with his own 2 eyes. He certainly didn't like it, but now he can start to deconstruct and attack some of those areas. Can he be a miracle worker? We'll find out, because this is the personnel that he has to work with. But it's going to be curious moving forward here. Like, how many times can he put his team on blast? How many times is he going to have to bite his lip? Because he doesn't strike me as a guy that wants to hold back with his comments. And we certainly encourage honesty. But you just wonder, again, in this day and age of that sort of divide between the coaches and the players, how far is too far? Can he get away with this once? But if he continues to attack his players, might some of them turn on him. And he also knows that, this group isn't going to be here intact as it is with the trade deadline ahead. So some of these guys, if they know they've got 1 foot out the door, like, really, do they have to abide by, what he says if the criticism is, unwarranted or too harsh in their minds?
Well, let's finish off the entire analysis here and finish off on the psychological, because I think he nailed it too. And kudos to Rick Tocchet on this. That's a broken team, like systemically broken. I don't know that they're a very good team just in terms of overall skill set, but I think I back him up in this. Like, that's a team that doesn't want the puck necessarily. That I think they're kind of done with the season. I really do, which is a dangerous place to be when your games played is in the 40s.
I think they're just checking. I think they're just checking out early before the bye, Blake. You see this a lot with teams going into bye weeks, where, especially ones that aren't competitive in the standings.
And just really quickly, guys,
it's all about making the Hawaii plans and all that.
I didn't have an issue, and I wouldn't have had an issue if he had injected fresh legs. But let's be honest, Lane Peterson, Riley Stillman, and Ethan Bear were his extras. There's not a difference maker in the bunch. I do think Ethan Bear is in their top 6, and I know that he and his wife just had a baby, and I think they did lose a dog over the weekend as well. So a lot going on in their life, and maybe he just needed a couple of days away, and that's all fine. I would imagine that Ethan Bear, at the very least, will play on Friday night. This is all about fact-fighting. Like, this is Rick Tocchet trying to figure out who he's got and what he's got to work with. So I would think he would want to see Riley Stillman at some point as well. Not that Riley Stillman's going to be the answer, but these are the players you've got at your disposal. You kind of have to have a sense of who's available and who can do what for you. Would he have benefited from a few fresh legs? Yeah, probably. But ultimately, those guys weren't going to turn that game in the other direction.
Last question, Jeff. It's our Bodog poll question. Will Rick Tocchet be the most quotable head coach of the Canucks all time?
He's off to a good start. I don't know how many others called their team soft after 2 games, Probably not many. I would imagine that's a pretty short list. Like Harry Neal was an incredible quote machine.
I was going to say Harry
Torts.
is probably the all-timer, but Torts and Boudreau are
And I
in
mean,
the
that's
ball
going
game.
back a couple of generations, obviously. But Harry Neal was great with a quip, and obviously went on to a legendary career in the broadcast booth. You got Torts on the, he'd be up at the top as well, even though his time here was brief. So, yeah, I mean, I suppose the potential is there. I think we're all still getting a read on Rick Tocchet, but there were some quotes about the elephant at the press conference the other day, and last night calling team soft. So, just about every appearance has had something that you can take away in that regard. So, I'm going to hold off saying yes, absolutely, but I think he might give it a pretty good run.
Yeah,
I don't know that he even had a nibble of elephant last night. I don't think anything was accomplished in eating the elephant last night.
I imagine it has a lot of iron. I imagine it's a deep red, sort of tougher.
Yeah. Like a tuna.
Protein,
like an
protein.
ahi.
Yeah. Marvelous stuff, Jeff. Hey, thank you for this. Canucks on a bye next week. We'll talk to you on Monday.
All right, guys. Thanks. Have a great weekend.